Hey there fellow art lovers and fans of all things painted. Welcome back to my regular viewers, and if you're new here, welcome. Name's Cal, and it's great to have you here. Recently on Discord I took part in a challenge on a server I'm a part of. The challenge was to turn an ordinary creature into a mythical one, and each person was assigned an ordinary creature. I was assigned a cockroach. So I started thinking about existing mythical creatures and what makes them special. A dragon's a lizard with wings, a unicorn's a horse with a horn, that kind of thing. So for the cockroach, the first thing I noticed when looking at pictures of them was the carapace. I thought, let's make that even more effective as armor with ridges and an extra thick shell. For the shape of the body, I went for something in between a devil's coach horse beetle and a hissing cockroach. I thought, hiss, yes, hiss of steam. This thing is steam powered. And that started a whole chain of thought. Maybe this thing isn't even a living creature. Maybe this thing's an automaton, a robot, created by an eccentric alchemist to guard their lab and their research. And it can roll into a ball like a pill bug to crush its foes. That was just a little detail I just really liked and decided to add on. After I'd finished the preliminary sketches, I went in with a fine brush to make the line art. I needed this particularly for the legs, which I wanted to add more detail to. They would be made of metal with gears and doodads to make them move. It also lets me add small details to the metal plates, such as carved sections and ridges. Then it was time to add colour. I started out with steely blues for the mandibles. I needed a colour that would allow the white hot metal I was going to add later to stand out. For the lower half I went with warmer, more bronzy colours, as I felt this would contrast nicely with the steely blue mandibles and carapace. I blocked them in piece by piece on separate layers, as this would help with shading later on. I repeated the same process on the rolled up pose, keeping the edges nice and crisp. This next bit was probably the most time consuming, as there were a few steps to getting it to look right. The first was to dab little lighter discs onto the curved portions of the carapace. I added an overall highlight to the section and used a multiply layer to paint in some deep cracks in between the discs. Then it was time to add some iridescence to the discs. I was inspired by the bobbit worm, a rather terrifying looking undersea worm that burrows into the sand on the ocean floor and goes after small fish with its large jaws. I tried a few different blending modes for the iridescence and settled on lighten mode. Then I added some more highlights to the disc and then a thin stripe pattern to the ridges. I repeated this for every section of the carapace. I considered the first section to be a bit of a test, seeing if I liked how it looked, and when I felt that I did, that was my signal to repeat it on the rest. It was definitely time consuming, but when you want something to look a certain way, you'll take the time to make it so, whether you do that all in one sitting or taking little breaks in between like I do to procrastinate and watch videos. At the very end of the abdomen, I added in that hot metal effect I mentioned earlier. This creature has an internal furnace. When it eats scrap metal, it melts it down inside this furnace and can eject that molten metal from both ends, making it a formidable foe. Its antennae are tightly ridged, as I wanted them to have plenty of flexibility. Something kind of like the old-fashioned phone cords of the days of yore. When I was painting the underside, I made sure to add some dents to the metal. This creature is not brand new and has seen battle before, so it's not entirely unblemished. Its eyes move on swivels, kind of like a robotic chameleon. When you're creating a mythical creature, your best inspiration is often the natural world around you. So many creatures have the most intriguing adaptations and features. Something I always find fun is using highlights and shading to turn a flat color into a 3D object, painting in the sharp edges with a bright highlight, or filling in the recesses with shadow. After repeating the same process on all 6 legs, I moved on to the underside using similar techniques. Though the underside was made up of much simpler shapes, so I used broader strokes to bring out the curve of the metal. I had gushes of steam coming out from the joints and from the tail end. I used a mixture of cloud brushes and hairbrushes of all things, which came in very handy for the high velocity areas where it's just exited the creature before it puffs up at the ends. I repeated the same techniques from earlier for the pill bug. You do not want to see this thing barreling towards you and infiltrating an alchemist's lab in search of rare ingredients, do you? I love that iridescence though. It's such a gorgeous effect. Trust nature to have the most beautiful things. This creature is huge, and I added in a little guide to show just how big this beast is. I also decided to add one more pose, something to showcase the creature's vicious nature and the molten metal it spits out. So I sketched out a quick pose of it seen from the underside as it attacks a brave warrior. It also gives you a look at the way this creature moves, with alternate legs lifting off the ground as it walks. And we're done. I'm really happy with how this came out and how the blues and golds work together quite nicely. But let me know what you think. If you enjoyed what you just watched, please be sure to leave the video a like and subscribe and ring the bell to see more content. If you want to support my art, you can find a link to my Ko-Fi in the description. And if you want to get straight into some more art, you can go and watch this video for my latest content. Or this one for something random.